attended is Mark Lemay, myself, Pete Progentis is chair, Kelly Boyer vice chair,
These ready to be signed?
Jim with the beard.
Thank you again for this special meeting. So we were advised by DRA, after your meeting on Monday, Danielle finalized the budget forms, and DRA gave us a heads up about the 10% rule. And basically, town meeting cannot approve appropriations that exceed the budget committee recommendation by over 10%. Because the bond was not recommended by the budget committee, if the bond were to pass, they would start at the bottom of the warrant and start pulling off appropriations till they got to that 10%, which would impact our operating budget potentially. So we did talk with both bond counsel and legal counsel. We had a little bit of back and forth with them. There is a provision in RSA 32:18-A that allow you to override the 10% rule for bonds. It is when the bond is placed on the warrant. In this case, the board put it on the warrant because it was submitted by petitioners. Then you are still able to recommend against the bond. There was a little bit of confusion with the language in the statute saying that the governing body was in favor of placing the bond on the warrant. That is simply you putting it on the warrant. That does not take away your ability to make a recommendation. So you still have the ability to make a recommendation against.
Well, we didn't have the authority not to put it on the warrant, is that correct?
Correct. You had to put it on the warrant.
It had to be on, right.
Yeah. So what we'd be looking to do is modify the annual warrant for Article 7 and add the following sentence at the beginning. Passage of this article shall override the 10% limitation imposed on this appropriation due to the recommendation of the Budget Committee. And then it would go on to have the same exact wording that was already included with the bond that was submitted by petition. Be happy to answer any questions you might have about the process.
So if we don't do this, it would affect our budget.
If we don't do this and the bond were to pass at the requested 7.2 million, do you have the number of what the total?
DRA number was?
Yeah, the DRA number?
It was just over 30, including the 10%.
Including the 10%?
Yes, just over 30 million.
So the bond with
Because
all the
there's
other
certain exclusions.
appropriations was close to 34 and a half. So you'd basically have to cut $4 million. And again, you'd start at the bottom of the warrant, so Crispin's house, the capital reserve fund, the EMS fund, and then you'd go into the operating budget until
And what would happen if the bond passed and the budget didn't,
then you'd be pulling
Out of the default
out of the
budget.
default.
which is already $1 million less?
Yes. Yeah, so this was a protection that was put in 2000 by the legislature. I did share a copy with the emails between legal counsel with the board, as well as all of the legislative back story that kind of went into the adoption of this RSA.
Did you say the DRA would cut if we overrode or
Yes.
they would cut our?
DRA has the ability to disallow any appropriations that are not within the scope of town meeting.
Yeah.
And that's part of why the warrant has to be structured in a very particular order, because DRA will always disallow from the bottom of the warrant. So last thing voted in is the first thing cut, and then it goes back from there. And so when we put our warrant together, typically Derek and I always put the operating budget as the foremost item, and then we go down the list kind of in priority. But because of the way the RSAs are structured for bonding, bonds must be seated first as the first appropriation after the election of officers and zoning articles.
So they do it, they
They
cut
do.
it, there's no.
Yes, we have to submit all the paperwork to them and what the voters amended, but if they see that somehow town meeting and the voters approved more than 10%. It's basically you're giving voters a notice of this is the proposed budget and appropriations. You can't have a select few that attend the deliberative session and the voting and then, double it. So that the legislature has put a 10%
That's all,
limitation.
yeah, it's been there for.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. It would
It's kind of
be-
a no-brainer.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, I think, I think it would be prudent for you to add this language. I don't think that it changes, it doesn't change the intent or anything about the petition article. You can still, maintain your recommendation on there, and I think we'll still have the same discussion at deliberative session, so.
And it has to go first of this piece of,
Yes, the RSA 3218A, the Roman numeral 2 does require that this precedes the actual question.
okay.
And it has to be listed on there before we post the warrant, so it couldn't be something
Yeah, we
that's
couldn't,
added
yeah,
at
we couldn't
deliberative.
add it at deliberative session because the argument is the voters would not have proper notice of the potential impact of all the appropriations. So.
Okay. Motion?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
So the motion is to add on to Article 7, passage of this article shall override the 10% limitation imposed on the appropriation due to the non-recommendation of the Budget Committee. Motion was by Margaret, was seconded by Kelly. Any more discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
And I think it would be appropriate to redo your vote on the recommendation or non-recommendation because it is technically a different it is a different article language and the impact. I know that Selectman Adams is not here, but I think it would be appropriate for you to consider taking up your motion to not recommend one more time now that you have slightly altered language.
I'll make that motion like I made last week.
I'll second it like I did last week.
Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
I do have a question for the voter guide.
Yes.
Would the petitioner put in the information for the voter guide, or would we be doing that? Because I just want to clarify.
So we have been talking with I corresponded with the chair of the library trustees today. They had asked questions about what they're able to distribute at deliberative session. They're going to give me a draft. It has to be approved by the moderator.
Right.
And what we've done in the past when there's been a petition and they've submitted items for the deliberative session, we usually take language directly from whatever they submit there.
Okay, great.
And there's no public funds, they realize there's no public funds spent to
So
do that.
the voter's guide is meant to be informational.
Right.
It is not advocating for a vote for or against, so.
Right, I'm talking about with their flyer that they produce,
Yes.
they realize that,
Yep.
yeah.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh,
We do
wait.
have one other item.
Okay.
I gotta sign stuff you signed.
No, it's for Bobby. I took care of it.
Is a copy,
I'll pass around
Okay.
the signature page, the new signature page on the warrant.
so the other item we had for discussion is the engagement letter for bond counsel. So now that we've gotten to this point, bond counsel has asked that we sign off on an engagement letter that indicates that we're aware of what their services would cover and really what the scope of work would be. It does address the fee for bonding, so if the article proceeds and the bond moves forward, bond counsel would walk us through the application process and give us all the required sign-offs in order for that bond application to move forward.
And why does that have to be done now?
It has to be done because we're already working with bond counsel in order to ensure our language is appropriate, that our meetings have been properly noticed for our public hearing and whatnot.
Okay, so why do we have to have this portion of the document done now? Why can't that wait until we go further with, if there is a bond? Are we getting any cost by doing this?
The only time you have costs is if the bond actually goes.
Is issued.
Is issued. So if it were to fail at town meeting, there would be no cost. But we have been engaged with this attorney on this whole last week on this 10% rule, as well as back in December when we learned that a petition would be coming forward, we reached out to them.
Who's bonds counsel?
We've Divine Millimet. It's.
Renee LaHoyer.
They have a bond counsel?
Yes, yes, we used them back when we did the fire station bond.
Go
So
ahead.
is this sort of, in preparation for if we were to continue on with the bond, or is this based off of everything we've done with them already?
It's a little of both. So the engagement letter indicates that they're going to guide us through the entire process, starting from giving their advice and recommendation to ensuring that we properly notice. So every meeting that we've had, the public hearings, we've had to submit a copy of our notice to ensure that our notice language was proper, that everything was posted in the timely fashion. So they're already engaged in that portion, but it's their policy that they don't bill until and if the bond is issued.
Okay, and then if it were to be issued, though, does that lock us in contractually with them?
Yes.
And is there other options? Because that's something we'd have to put out to bid, or?
So we don't have to put it out to bid necessarily as far as it's a legal service, and it's one that our current firm does offer. This firm offers a better rate for the service when we've compared. There's a limited list of who bond counsel is
Okay.
within the state, so they have to be registered within the state as a bond counsel.
And
And
if
what's
it-
the, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And if it doesn't pass at that point, what happens?
Then they could bill us for just the services rendered
Okay.
if they felt like they had put in significant time.
Yeah, so I'm not in favor of that, then they would have to go, go to the library's funds and not the town funds.
I think we could work
That's-
with Diane on.
That's-
Diane has
yeah.
indicated that that would be the case.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Because that shouldn't hit the town funds if it's.
No, they've
That's
already
what- that was-
authorized.
That was my original question.
Oh, I'm
Are
sorry, I
there
didn't
any
understand what you
fees
meant.
if it doesn't go through? And you said, no, it's only fees if it passes.
Right, the full amount of the bonding service, which is a flat fee that you see here, that's if the bond goes through. If there are any hourly charges, the library has already provided authorization to charge their legal line. So as we're going through the
So,
process.
wait a minute, it's their legal line.
Yes,
That should be charged towards the building fund that they have, not towards the town. The town shouldn't be paying for that. This is a petitioned article that's requested in this bond.
we can discuss that with Diane.
We can definitely bring that back to the trustees.
You understand where I'm coming
Yes,
from?
yep, yep, the funds that were appropriated
Well,
at
Right.
prior
No, I
meeting.
get what you're saying, but what would happen in a situation where if it was a petition article from a citizen who didn't have no connection to the town? What would we do in that instance?
I don't know, this is a little bit different situation, because
I'm just
we've
curious, 'cause-
the town has already voted monies to set aside to pursue this project.
No, I hear what you're
Right,
saying. I'm
and
just
that's where
wondering.
those charges go to. So, I don't know how you want, but that's where I would stand on that.
So we would have to authorize, and then any movement or any bill that's not able to be covered by them would have to come back to us.
For approval.
Right. Give them authorization to work with the library to fund that.
Right, that's what it would have to be. I mean, it's, the town hasn't, the voters of the town haven't authorized us to spend money on bond council. Where does that authorization come from? That's my question. Budget committee hasn't authorized it.
You do have legal lines within your budget, and so it is, I think, under RSA 32, you have the ability to do it, but I hear what you're saying, that you would, your preference would be that the private funds, the donation funds that have already been appropriated to the library project be hit and set, and we can definitely talk to the trustees about
All
that.
right. So how do you want that worded? Do you know how it's, what we said?
In the motion, yes. Yes, I believe, do you have a motion that,
So I think what we'd ask for is authorization for the chair to sign the engagement letter with the understanding that any costs related to the engagement letter be borne by the library trustees with funds appropriated at prior town meetings.
Right.
Because again, those were,
Jim made the motion, seconded by
Second.
Kelly.
Yeah.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Can I ask you a question? Do we have anybody, I don't know how many bonds we have out there, but just in general, do we have anybody that keeps an eye on the bonds over the term of years? Because I know they can be refinanced and things like that if a favorable
Yes.
rate comes out. that's in
Right,
use.
the only bond we have currently is the 2016 Series B bond that we have through the bond bank. The bond bank actually monitors that, and they inform us if there are any qualifying bonds for refinancing.
Okay, so.
And it depends on
Okay.
which series it is and when it was
Somebody
issued.
keeps an eye on it.
So yes, Danielle does.
yeah, Danielle, and that one's a
Okay.
20-year bond, and it's my understanding that you don't have the option before 10 years, I believe.
Before 10 years.
So we still have a few years
Okay. All right.
before that might even be an
Just wanna
option.
make
But I
sure.
know the school did refinance at one point, the sewer commission has as well. So we've only got that one outstanding one.
Town only has the fire station.
The fire station right now, yeah, the landfill closure expired a few years ago.
Yeah,
We do have
two or 3 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yep.
Yeah.
So you want signatures?
Just
Yes, on
one
that,
signature.
yes.
These
one
are
one
all
round.
ones we've seen, I just checked, it's the new languages. and
Yes.
everything.
Yes. And then this is the one for the chair for the engagement letter.
And that's,
It's just, Peter
Just-
just needs to sign that, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna be a tiny now.
Did you see what happened to the Villa Ball Field bat cage?
yeah, the snow came
Snow
down.
came
They've
down.
they've had a rough winter,
Oh, this sign and now the.
yeah, yeah.
Today's what date?
The 27th?
Rick needs the.
I'll give you back that one.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Wait for him to get done. Anything else?
No.
Thank you.
Motion?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Jim. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you.